We've gone, it's already past an hour, but I'm not done. So,
and we're not through
it's
yet.
the year
This
end.
one's going to be longer. It's fine.
It's the year-end review. We got to go through some stuff. Here's what's funny, is that I thought I knew in my mind what was going to be my other favorite of the year, which was the movie I watched this year, not the favorite that came out. But I was wrong, because this only goes to show how much I like this movie, that I am still thinking about it, such that I thought I watched it this year, I was going to say it's the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was my favorite that I watched. But it can't be, because I watched that last year. And I didn't remember that. So it's like, clearly I'm thinking about it enough that I thought that I watched it this year, which means that it stuck with me even more than I thought it was going to. So I need to probably raise the rating on it for that reason alone. But since that's out of the running, there are two... Hang on, where are they? Uh-oh. Oh, don't tell me the runner-up was also disqualified. Oh, no. It might be. I'll have nothing.
Ben, I have nothing.
Oh, gosh, I watched a lot of movies this year. Never mind. Ah, okay, barely it makes it. Take a guess.
Lock.
That will probably actually come in second place.
That is surprising, because that's what I would have pegged as the one that you were most...
It certainly comes the closest. It's in fact comes in second only to one other film in terms of raw rating. In terms of staying power, again, this is why I actually do go back and revise my ratings of things, because one thing you can't predict is that kind of how much is it going to stick with me.
See, I don't know.
Because
that
affects
what makes a good film.
It
for
does.
Me.
It has
to. Because I don't want
if,
that kind of angst.
It's not angst. It's about things that stick with you. Sometimes they're just things that are positive still. It's not an angst-ridden thing that makes it stick with you. It's just something I'm like, wow, I still think of that fondly even now. So I'll admit that one has stuck with me more than the other one, because there's obviously the immediate reaction is worth something. But how long it stays with you is worth another thing. That's why sometimes I revise, because sometimes I'll be like really impressed with the movie, and then like 6 months will go by and I'll be like, oh yeah, I guess I did watch that. Which is like, okay, so it was more, it had flash but less substance than I thought at the moment. Sometimes that happens. But Locke was certainly, and that barely qualifies because I watched that in January, apparently, according to this. But, and again, I am only further damaging my weeb case. Because the film that, at least the highest rated film, as a matter of fact, it might be.
In your entire letterbox.
What? Okay, that's a mistake. No, that's a mistake. I was going to say it's the only 5-star rated film, but I'm seeing another 5-star rated film which shouldn't have been. So I'm going to have to correct that, because that should not have been that. Yeah, so it is the only 5-star rated film this year. And admittedly, as I'm thinking back on it, I think maybe it's not quite that, because I haven't thought about it as much as I thought about Locke. And Locke I gave a 4.5, because I'm very hesitant to give 5 stars. But it was an anime film called Machia, which is an interesting concept. Because I'm going to attempt to defend my weebishness. Because the thing that makes this interesting is not the fact that it's an anime film.
I think we could safely put to bed the fact that you were even questioning this in previous episodes.
I know. That's why I said I'm only making it worse. But admittedly, the concept alone is what makes it fascinating, because it's the idea of it, the basic premise, and I think you'll even find this, at least even if you don't watch it, to be like, oh, that does sound interesting, it is about an immortal elf girl. She's like part of this immortal race that basically, like the elves in Lord of the Rings, they never grow old.
Yeah.
Adopts a human child because both of their villages are destroyed by this enemy army. And so naturally the dynamic of that is this human child grows up normally, and this girl basically stays like this teenage girl this whole time. So it's a very strange kind of dynamic of as the kid gets older, that's like how does her being immortal affect his not being immortal, and how she's technically his adoptive mother, despite the fact that he eventually by the end of the film is much older than her appearance wise. And so I just thought that that was an interesting concept, and it does very well by exploring it. And I won't tell more than that because it's worth watching. But admittedly, I don't know that it has stuck with me as much as Locke did on a mental. I still sometimes think about
Well,
it.
because I think Locke
So maybe they both should be 4.5.
went out to speak to something on the human level.
Well, they both do actually. Here's the reason, and I'm just going to undo all of my mystique. I don't cry at films often. You would know this about me.
Yeah.
No one would be surprised about this. And this is not like, oh, I'm a tough guy, I don't cry at movies. It's genuine. Like, a film has to be very good for me to cry at it.
Sure.
And I didn't just cry at this movie. This was one of the few movies where I was actually somewhat undone by the end of it. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happened to me? I was actually kind of unnerved. It's like, I've never had this kind of a response to a movie, because it's dealing with complicated relationships of parents and how you growing up. And I guess maybe I'm at a stage of life where the gut punch of the movie is directed at people my age. So it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to argue about whether or not I should be ashamed for weeping at this movie. But
Maybe that's why I connected a bit more with Wonka than you in that respect.
you think it was aimed at adults with
No,
young children?
No. I think that my story, as far as my, not despondency, but my kind of falling away or my falling out I've had with my folks, has made scenes like him, telling people that he was expecting his mom to show up still or whatever, and then she finally does by the end of the film. It was a little bit more like heavy-handed for me. It was like, yeah,
For the firemen.
yeah, when they actually show up.
And you sure you don't need therapy, huh?
I'm not sure about that yet, actually.
Because and here's another thing. And this is actually what's really weird. Because I had a very similar experience, and I guess this might make a natural transition into the book category. Not this year. This was years ago. I read a book, it's somewhere on my shelf, called The Light Between Oceans, which had a movie adaptation that you shouldn't see, apparently, because it wasn't very good. But the book is incredible, and it was a similar experience where it's even harder for a book to make me cry than a movie. Just because I guess because reading is a more mental thing.
Sure.
It's harder to manipulate emotions when you're having to read it, because you are a willing participant in the story more than a movie, which you're passively watching.
Right.
But that was a similar thing where it's like, I didn't just cry at the end of this book. I was actually like, oh my gosh, I'm weeping. And that's the only book that's ever made me do that. And yet, similarly, I don't know that I think of this book as like, oh my gosh, I love it. It's my favorite book ever. But I also can't deny that reaction is something that no other book has managed, because even books that have made me cry have never done that to me.
But is that what makes a good book?
Well, I wonder I don't think that they're not strictly opposed. The concept of, is it a flash in a pan or is it a staying thing you'll remember forever? I think both can be valid, which is why I feel like, okay, if this has affected me in the moment more than anything has affected me like this, even though other things affect me for a longer period of time, is that better or is that just different? Can they both, can that be a high watermark of standard, even if they're two separate standards? It's like, if I have to give a number to it, can they both earn a 5-star rating? Either such an intense emotion in the moment or a long-standing, permanent impact. Are they both worth 5, or is one inherently worth less? I don't know. That's difficult to say, because, you have to acknowledge that nothing else has done it, which means what did it do that other things can't? So I don't know. But that was a similar thing. Now, that's not exactly relevant to the year, because I read that years ago. But in terms of books, I am much less I have very little memory of the things I've read this year because I've as much as I have watched quite a number of movies this year because I've been deliberate about that, I have failed to be as deliberate about books. I also feel like I'm talking a lot. What did you do this year?
I've
Have you done anything?
done a lot more exploring in music than I have in a number of years. So,
Yeah, which was your favorite Halsey song of the year?
wow. No, I did like I said, so there's been two playlists again that I have talked about in previous episodes that have both branched into a bit of hybrids, but one started out as a workout / like rah kind of playlist.
This has been a very long year.
And then the other was one that was originally almost like a throwback kind of. I wanted to reclaim some of the emo songs that I grew up listening to in high school, and then ended up just branching out from there. But there are I started listening to music again from the point of view of songs that really encapsulated a particular either feeling or something that felt familiar. And there are a few that I've really felt like have been like, this is, you can't, they hit the nail on the head so profoundly that I was like, this is going to stick with me for a long while. But again, outside of like the actual, because I know you haven't enjoyed the playlist as a whole as much.
I don't
but
think I've
there's
listened
been
to a playlist at all.
Well, you've listened to a few of them, but like obviously Teddy Swims I came across this year. I think he's great.
I mean, I have artists. See, for me, it's not so much songs as it's like artists that I'm like, I'll remember you.
But
because individual songs are far more short-lived in my. Maybe it's because I have a tendency to listen to them so much that I'm like, all right, I've exhausted it. It now goes into the catalog of.
Now, have you heard any songs by the artist Yebba? Yebba.
Don't think so. Do I want to?
She is.
Because the name does not inspire confidence.
Really good. It's very much an indie vibe. Like she has one song that literally.
See, you say you don't like indie music though.
No, she has this one particular song.
Oh, so
literally
it's one of those
is just only electric guitar the entire time and her voice, but it's crazy good, like just ridiculous. But this particular song has stuck with me this year more than anything else, and it is called. It's called.
While you're doing this, I'm gathering up my books that I've read this year, and in contrast to movies, this is making the year feel very long. Because with movies, I was like, Locke, I feel like I watched that yesterday. And that was at the beginning of the year. And I'm going back to the first book I read this year, and I'm like, I thought I read that in college. And I haven't even read that many books this year. That's embarrassing.
It's interesting. It comes back. Everything comes back to Arcane. So apparently,
there was no Yebba in Arcane. I know the Arcane soundtrack.
No, I know. This particular song that just stuck with me all year has been. I don't know if you've heard.
Was it a cover of it?
No.
How does it come back to Arcane?
No, Yebba is a separate thing. This is a different song.
What? You were telling me about this artist who made the song you liked.
No, I was saying there's a different song that is equally cool, but this is the song that I was saying.
So Arcane was just an offshoot.
No, the Arcane is the song that stuck with me all year. The Yebba was an offshoot. It was more of a curiosity thing. This song, though, I'm not sure whether you've listened to it from
I am certain that I have.
Soundtrack, but it's...
Who are you talking to? Yes, I'm aware of this song.
Yeah,
of course I am.
But
I admit, there is a channel whose name escapes me, but he or she, I think it's a group effort. They do re-orchestrations of songs that are popular in TV and random stuff. They do it for all sorts of things, but they did several of the songs from Arcane, and I'm like, I actually like their versions of almost all of them more, except for the song that can't be named.
Okay.
I mean, there is the song, the finale song of the show is literally one of those songs where I'm like, I actually can't listen to that, just because it would put me in a mood. I have to be very specifically wanting. That's one of those songs I'm like, dude, I can't just let this come on at any time because it's gonna put me in a mood I can't get out of.
No, just the first couple lines for me on this
That song.
song
That's
is like literally.
well,
I can hear the
the
sound
most
of a heartbeat before it calls out. I'm like
the
literally.
three. Well, of course, the three
me,
most
on an
impactful
empath
songs from
level.
that show are the ends of the 3 acts.
Sure.
That's the end of the first. The Guns for Hire is the end of the second, and
Is that a fact?
yes, and What Could Have Been is the end of the third. That's why I mean naturally, if you're going to put all of your, well, they don't put all their eggs, but if you're going to put a lot of if you're going to put a lot of your eggs in a musical basket, the finale song is the right one.
Well, just again, I probably really do need therapy, but going into like
Statistically speaking, a third of all people have some kind of mental issue they could get rid of.
But like
not
even
get rid
just
of, but manage.
this
with therapy.
idea, this particular line.
Now that we're in hour 2 and almost 1.5, I'm hour 2, hour 1.5. I'm cracking open the winter version of the root beer. Oh boy, it's a stiffy. I mean, as friends.
You're getting so excited about this root beer. Okay, that's it. You're a minute, man.
Okay, it does say, so it isn't just regular root beer. It says something about special edition with Bavarian nutmeg. My guess is they're attempting to be Christmassy. We shall see.
I will join you.
Oh,
in
yes,
just a
I
moment.
smell the Bavarian nutmeg.
No, but both.
Oh,
that-
did you hear that? Hang on, we got to get this Foley. Oh. So it must have been...
That just ruined it. Oh!
It was one of those things where it was the perfect water level where the first sip did the full glug, 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 glug. And I guess the water level's wrong now and it won't do it again. So y'all don't get to appreciate that.
Probably heard it the first time.
That
and
was
you
just
ruined it
for
with,
me.
Oh!
That was just for me and my friend.
You're stiffy.
No.
But then the second line, I can see a tear on my father's face before it falls. I'm like, literally, this is me, like verbatim.
And yet
I grew up like this.
See, here's the thing. You just don't want to admit that you're powder as much as I am.
Powder.
Jinx.
Yeah. I mean.
Because this is why when you were like, oh gosh, she's so annoying, I'm like, you're going to feel it later, I promise.
But.
This is also why you don't like Halsey. She's too much like you.
Wow. No,
that's not an insult coming from me.
This line though is what really killed me, is when it goes into the "Where's my home? I don't recognize the faces anymore. Where's my friend?"
You need to rewatch this show. You haven't since we first watched it, have you?
That's true. But so yeah, that's one that stuck with me. I will say, as far as artist wise, who's probably made the most of the biggest splash, The
trouble is,
year.
I have no means of looking any of this stuff up.
Well, this is why.
Because this is the problem with my algorithm stuff with music. It's like once it gets added to the algorithm, I can't track where I found it again. It just gets baked in. It's part of the ship, part of the crew.
The whole what is it called? Spotify thing. As much as I hate it, has been helpful.
Oh, their year-end review.
The
funny thing is the hack version.
No, not their year-end review. Just me being able to scroll things and look at it.
Does it actually show you the first time you listen to it?
No, I add things on to a particular playlist. So
but see, that's okay. See, that's again. I don't listen to individual songs as much as it's like artists that stick with me. So I can't name the first time.
I'll
I
add an
listened to this
entire
artist.
I'll add.
I actually have started, although I've not been very consistent with it.
Album.
I have a playlist which is meant to be basically like a record of any time a song sticks in my mind that like for weeks I'll listen to it.
Right.
I'll add it to this, but it isn't a thing I actively listen to. I am migratory in the day-to-day, but I do this explicitly for the bookkeeping of like, oh, that was the first time I listened to this, was back then. And this was the place I was in that made me like this song. Because the thing is, with music, I am so much more mood based with music than I am cerebral. So I can't name like this was when I watched it and this is what I liked about it like I can with movies. It's like, no, this was just the place of life I was in, so this is what resonated, and now that I'm not in that place, I don't feel it anymore. So I want to keep a record of it for my own sake, but it isn't something that's like it carries on with me. I am much more of a nomad with music than with most other art forms.
Yeah. But Teddy Swims definitely was one that impacted me a great deal.
I do like the
There was
old
a-
stout root beer bottle that they packaged this in.
There was on a less serious note, and like I wouldn't say this has had the most impact. I just really enjoyed him as a bit of a temporary divergence, but this has been the most fresh. Is a artist named Hunter Hayes, and I kid you not, he is a modern Rascal Flatts. As far as like the sound of his voice.
Is that a good thing? Rascal,
I enjoy Rascal
the guy
Flatts.
in Rascal Flatts was never the part of Rascal Flatts I liked. And I was never that huge into them.
I enjoyed them, but
I mean, they were good lyrically. I'm not sure that I was like, man, this guy's such a great singer. I'm not on this music track. I mean, if I had to take a stab, because I don't have the record keeping ability on this, the artist who I think stuck. Well, I guess I'll get before, since my other record keeping wasn't all up to snuff. Let me see actually if I know what I'm talking about. But if I had to take a stab, the artist who will play the biggest role for me this year was Porter Robinson, probably, because he kicked off the kind of weird indie electronica vibe that I'm still kind of in. And I mean, in some ways, Arcane was really the thing that set that off.
so
But then
like I
once-
said, it all comes back to Arcane.
Well, I mean, everything does. We've already established that, but it definitely took its own. Originally, it was I'm listening to the Arcane soundtrack, and then I was listening to things that were prompted by the Arcane soundtrack, and then I got into a weird state where I was listening to fan-made playlists for various characters.
Huh.
Like, that's how deep I was into that rabbit hole, where it was like, this is Jinx's playlist based on, and I like that better because it's a human thing. It's not an algorithm. It's some person who's like, based on my perception of Jinx, these are songs that she would like. Based on songs that I like, then I resonate with her as a character or something. And so that led me on Weird Rabbit Trail, which then got me onto the Porter Robinson, and that's when he sort of took off on his own. Let me see.
I am going to pull up Yebba real quick.
Sleeping at Last was probably this year, but that was early this year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
when you showed me though.
That was probably very early this year.
Yeah, I did a great deal of. See, what's interesting is I have a lot
And
of
then Eight
one-off-
Graves has been a recent one.
I have a lot of one-offs in this playlist.
See, that's interesting.
No.
I don't... Unless... If an artist isn't consistent, I am not likely to latch onto anything they do.
But that's what's interesting.
Which is funny.
Because of this year, so Spotify added this weird thing where you could do shuffle with Spotify adding songs that were of similar kind.
That's not new.
Well, I've never used it then, maybe,
Hmm.
but either way, as I started doing that, I would find ones where it was like,
Because that's
this
entirely what the
particular-
YouTube music is all about.
Right. It's like this particular artist you may listen to, and it
Well,
throws
that's,
it in.
that's why I like
And
YouTube
I've
music, is it's a
found a
means of
ton of-
finding new people.
I've found a ton of people like that, but I've gone. Most of their stuff isn't my favorite.
But see,
or
here's
my
the thing.
cup of tea.
Here's
It's
something
just
you'll recognize. Uncle Lucius is the band who does Keep the Wolves Away.
yeah,
And I love that song, but I don't like Uncle Lucius. Because
Right.
most of their other songs aren't like that.
right, exactly.
So for me, again, I don't latch on to songs as much as I latch on to artists. So it's like I heard the first song by Porter Robinson. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then it recommended another, and I was like, oh, I'll listen to that one. And then I was like, okay, this guy just produces music that I like.
right,
And
that's
so
what
he
happens with
then,
Teddy Swims.
so it's then it's he gets added to the algorithm, and so that then prompts future searches. So I can't be like, this is the song specifically. It's like, no, I just like him as an artist. And if it's only one song, then that won't be substantial enough to affect the algorithm much.
It depends. Like Glimpse of Us is good by Joji, but it's not like I've
Joji.
never. It's an artist that I go. Any of his other stuff, I've been like, I can take it or leave it.
Well,
It's
like
not
Billie
really my
Eilish
favorite.
with me, apparently.
Um,
I did finally put that to the test, and apparently I was right. It's just the one song. I was like, okay, well, that's sad.
on the rest
I mean,
of the album.
I didn't do a chronological like album by album. Maybe that's the last thing
It
to
was
try.
the one that
I just did a recommended playlist of like give me a bunch of Billie Eilish, and I was just like, nope, not for me. So I guess I can put that to bed.
The weird thing about the way that I've curated these playlists this year has been, again, very much I wouldn't say like spur of the moment, like whatever comes to me, but a little bit of a purely as it comes across my path, I'm going to add it without even really paying attention to the artist, which is fairly unusual for me. Most of the time I'm adding based on the artist itself, not based on the song. But this year I've been like, add the song because I like it. And then as I've noticed that there have been multiple songs from a particular artist, I'll go, oh, I may actually like them.
Well, okay, I suppose. I mean, that's just how the algorithm works, though.
True.
Like, obviously, I'm not adding Porter Robinson before I know who he is. It's because I got recommended one song, and then I liked that song, and then another song got recommended. It's like, I don't know enough about how the Spotify algorithm works to know how it exactly lines up. The YouTube one it's literally just the YouTube algorithm. So it's like, hey, you like this, you'll probably like other stuff by them. But sometimes they're not right about that. Sometimes an artist makes one song that's kind of unique, and they don't make songs like that again.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, Sleeping at Last probably was earlier this year, even though that feels like longer ago. And then Porter Robinson, and then Eight Graves.
Well, where it started for me when it comes to the one playlist that was like workout / it became, I literally have named it Battle Songs, even though it's just...
See,
but it's...
That alone
It started
something.
with the songs from Peaky Blinders. Because it's essentially like...
It's a weird starting point for me.
Why?
There was very few songs in that show that I was like, oh, this one's all right. Most of them were very weird.
See, but in a good way.
No, just a weird way.
Okay.
Not all weird ways are good ways.
No, but I appreciated them. I liked the fact that they were a bit anachronistic. You know, that was the whole point of obviously.
Yeah, it was certainly a choice.
Well, he actually admittedly
I'm not tasting the Bavarian nutmeg.
Are you disappointed in that?
I mean, I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, I guess, does this taste like any old root beer? No. But does it taste like an exceptional root beer? Also, no. Now, here's the other thing. Sorry, going back to movies for a moment.
So we can jump there in just a second because I was talking about Peaky Blinders, but Stephen Knight intentionally actually did that with the whole anachronistic songs because he wanted it to be. He didn't want it to feel like a gangster movie.
But that's exactly what it feels like.
No, it doesn't though, because his whole point was it's supposed to feel like scrappy street gang. It's not supposed to feel like some sort of a polished like Godfather kind of vibe. That's not what he was
the
going
music
for.
from Godfather is not gangster.
Yeah,
It's Italian.
I understand
Those aren't
that.
synonymous. I understand why they might seem related, but
what I'm saying is he was trying to bring it down to a level of like this should feel
thuggish.
Not thuggish,
because that's how it comes across as thuggish.
Kind of. I mean,
like,
he's
that's
going
not
for a little bit more of a scrappy kind of.
But that's what. Okay, how is that different from gangsterish?
Put together vibe.
What do you expect gangster? What did he think gangsterish would mean?
Okay, that's not. You're hearing gangsterish as like a like gangbanger. That's not.
No,
what
but I'm saying, what does he think it means? What in his mind is the gangster music he was trying to avoid?
He was trying to avoid it feeling like a mafia film. Or a mafia
so
kind of vibe.
Really, as long as he stuck away from a mandolin, he'd have been fine.
Well, that's
So that's where I'm going. That's a strange, because in his attempt to avoid what he was wanting, he's at least the way he phrased it makes it sound like he ended up right where he didn't want to be.
No. What he was trying to do was capture this notion of modernity within the. Yeah, I mean, he wanted feel a little bit thuggish. Yeah, he should.
Well, okay, see, that's where I go. I don't know that. Even though traditional gangsters were more refined than they are nowadays.
Yeah, but that's not what he was trying to say.
But I'm saying
he was actually trying
even
to say
still,
that
they're
they
still thugs. Like,
yeah.
so to say you don't want it to sound gangsterish, I'm like, well, he's clearly separating something about gangsterishness that isn't the thuggishness, because that he kept.
You're latching onto the word gangster.
Well, that was the word he chose.
No, it's not the word he chose.
Okay, well then you're just badly paraphrasing.
Yes, what I am trying to say, and you latched onto a weird word. What I'm saying is,
Well, that was the word you gave me.
He didn't want it to feel like a polished, like, oh, these guys.
Well, yeah,
are
they don't
an
listen to
organized
classical
crime.
music. Well,
right?
Sure.
It was he wanted it to feel like very. They just are a group of
I don't
men
think all
that-
mobsters listen to classical music, though.
No, but even within watching the show, the reason why he used the modern music was because it actually set the audience in a bit of a. It almost made it real time, or like
It wasn't
modern
that. It
time.
wasn't that modern of music, though.
It was.
No,
it was.
It was still.
fairly
It was
modern.
no.
Yeah.
It still felt like it still felt like older working class music.
No, it didn't. Like especially like the fight scenes and stuff like that within like bars and things. It got really
You realize electric guitars have been around for a long time.
well. Sure.
So simply because a lot of those songs had rockier rhythms, it's like rock and roll's been around since the 50s.
And that wasn't the 50s.
No, it was the 30s. So it's like okay, he jumped ahead 20 years. That's not like modern.
But it felt very familiar, is all he was trying to go
Sure,
with.
I guess.
Like he wanted it to feel like you could connect with it, not.
Well, see, that's what connecting is not what I did with it. I mean, as much as I
You didn't
understand
like it.
vibe-based, it's like, yeah, okay, I can get the vibe he was going for, but connection's not what I've got.
Maybe.
Now, going back to movies for a second, you act like, oh, I go to see movies without you all the time. You have also watched movies without telling them about them at all.
Like what?
Like, I didn't know you had watched the Equalizer movies this year, because I did too, but I didn't think you had seen any of them at all before that. And you were like, no, I've already watched them. I was like, well, you never mentioned them at all. So, again, this is why Letterboxd would be useful, because you're acting like, oh, I just don't have the time to watch movies. I was like, well, that's clearly not true.
No, it's not that I don't have the time to watch movies. I don't have the time to sit down and review them afterward.
Okay, but see, that's also where I think you're thinking too much about it, because literally...
Maybe so. That's probably true.
I'll watch something and then I'll come home, or if I'm watching it at home, it literally is like, okay, I'll get it up. What do I think
like
about
a
it?
5-minute process for you.
Not
Yeah.
even. It's literally like, I mean, you talk
See,
about it on a
that's the
gut
thing
level
for
where I'm
me.
like, okay, where do I feel
not-
about it? Better than average, not as good as this. Okay, where would that fit numerically? Well, it has to fit between these two movies.
And that's
okay,
the
that's
problem.
the score.
For me, I
It's-
hyperanalyze it.
Yeah, but that's up to you. Don't do that.
No, I will, because I'm...
You don't have to.
It's the difference between...
I read something in the Analects that you'll appreciate because it reminded me of you.
Is this my yawnishness again?
No. Well, I'll see.
Yes.
I'll see how you take it. But it actually was one of those things that just made me laugh because it was just humorously put. But it says
It's my turn now to hawk.
But it says when it's like it says I forget who the name of this other historical person was. It's like says this person was said to think 3 times before he acted. When the master heard this, he said twice would do. And I was just like, okay, that's funny because it is a little bit like, yes, thinking is good, but don't do it too much. Like,
Sure.
you don't have to micro-analyze about, okay, is it going to be 0.7 or 0.8, and then I have to round up to the nearest 0.5. It's like, no, I basically go, I liked it more than this, I liked it less than that. What are those two scores? Okay, it has to go in between. And even then, sometimes I don't even cross-reference. It is basically like 2.5, as I've established, is I didn't feel anything. 3 to 3.5 is like,
Sure.
yeah, mildly positive. 4 to 4.5 is relatively highly positive, and then 5 is rare. That's as much thinking. So usually it doesn't take me more than like 2 or 3 minutes to give a rating. So you don't have to take as much time as you think you do.
No, I understand that. It's just,
And then you acted before like you're far more of a gut check, pass fail kind of reviewer. So was that just a lie?
no, it's not even that that's a lie. It's that if I'm sitting down to actually review something, I feel like I have to put more thought into it than just
But
that.
you don't. Because I've gotten, this is why I actually have started doing it, because it actually reinforces the already true maxim of there is no such thing as perfectly universal reviewing. My review list says just as much about me as it does about the movies.
Sure.
So review something. You could even go, you know what, I'm not even going to consider the number value. I'm just going to guess based on what it looks like when I swipe the stars and go, yep, that looks right to me. And that will say just as much about you as it does about the films, because I've learned to engage that process rather than it has to be the perfect universal every film.
I'm not looking for it to be a universal.
Well, then why do you got a micro?
Where it has to be like perfect for everybody. I'm just saying.
Then why not just give a sort of
because I want to know
wave of the hand?
Why my
that's precisely what I do, but that's why I review it. It's because it helps me go what are the trends that I like.
Not even
clearly
what are the
it's
trends that
these.
I like. It's like I feel like if I put 3.5 on a movie, I need to be able to say, and here's why.
Okay,
it's like geometry. You have to.
Then why does that take you so
your...
long to do? Because I can give you reasons why, but I don't have to sit and think about it for 5 minutes, usually. If I'm conflicted about a film, I will often review, actually, and write...
That's the answer. I'm often conflicted.
I will write a review about a film, actual words, rather than just giving a rating, if I'm conflicted. That's usually, if I am in a position where it's like a number won't suffice, then I'll actually usually write something. But that's usually only if it's like, I'm torn. Or... I made a joke on my Goodreads once that the only times I review things is when I really like them or if I'm conflicted about them. And I very rarely like things enough to write a review about them. So usually it's just like I'm torn because part of it sucked and part of it was really good and I'm stuck in the middle. Because there you go. There are times where a book is...
You get a stiffy first.
There's books that are...
My shot.
There are books that are like, oh, this is just average all the way through. Therefore, it's an average score. There's also books that were like, it really sucked up until the halfway, and then the last half was really great. Which is like, okay, well, that ends up at also an average score. But I feel like I have to write a review going, I need you to recognize that the averageness of the score is a composite, not that it was average all the way through. And that's why I write things, is so if I'm conflicted, then I will give a verbal description.
Yeah.
But unless I am conflicted, I find numbers generally do fine.
Sure.
So
I probably need to play a little more fast and loose with just
and you also will probably get more acquainted with your own review system as you do it. So
true.
If you do it for a while, you will be able to review it quickly.
That part of the process
just
that I'm
commit.
not good at. Because I go,
screw being good at it. You got to commit to it.
I want to already have a plan of like, here's what my process is.
This is the caterpillar's dilemma.
What?
You don't know your philosophical thought experiments.
No, I don't. You've apparently explored them.
Oh, it's not that. Well, okay. It also helps if you get it right. It's not the caterpillar's dilemma. It's the centipede's dilemma.
I was like, what?
But the idea is the centipede knows how to walk with 100 legs until it starts thinking about how many legs it has. It's like once you try to think about all the pieces that have to go together, you'll never be able to do it. Whereas if you just sort of let it happen, you'll be able to without thinking. So you'll find if you just commit to saying, even if I just give a gut reaction for the first 10 movies, you'll be surprised by the next 10 movies being easier to quantify.
Here's my gut level reaction. You ready?
About the soda?
I'm tasting the nutmeg.
Are you?
No.
It tastes fine for a root beer. I just don't know that the nutmeg is what's adding to that taste. Anyways, did you watch any movies that weren't ones we watched together that you liked? Because you didn't talk at all during the movie section. Except about how I see movies without you, unlike even though you do the same. You just don't go out to see them.
Did I watch any movies that I don't think I watched anything new.
Well, it doesn't matter. It can be the favorite movie you watched this year.
Well, that's...
Well, does anything stick? That's why that's a useful metric, is it's like, okay, it was months ago, but I still remember it. That usually is a sign that something worked.
See, what's annoying is the only thing that's coming to mind is Lock for me. And
boom! I win.
It's obnoxious.
I was playing the long game.
Because
it took a year, but I won.
The movie.
You did.
I didn't.
You enjoyed it without.
If I were to rate it right now on a gut level reaction, it probably would have been like a 2.5.
I don't believe you.
Good.
I don't believe you at all, because we had a pretty reasonably astute discussion about it.
Yes, I agree. It was great on a
And I think you'd have had to recognize...
level.
Well, yeah, but that's higher than a 2.5 in that book.
See, now you're having to act like I need to defend my 2.5.
Yeah, you said you wanted to, so defend it.
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like the film. That's what.
Yeah,
the
but see,
bottom
now
line is.
I would say that you're adding too much weight to the emotion. If you can agree, it was very well made.
It was,
but it didn't hit me personally because I would go,
right.
Doesn't the well-madness deserve to push it a little bit higher? Where I'd go,
does it though?
It didn't necessarily
entertaining.
Yeah, I don't think I can.
Thought-provoking, maybe. Entertaining, not.
Well,
really.
see, but again, that's also a strange dichotomy. Why? That almost presumes that a film is meant to be a filler in the background rather than a thing you engage with.
No,
it does,
it
because if a
filler,
film is mentally engaging, and you're saying, but it wasn't entertaining, therefore it failed at what it's supposed to do,
it needs to
which is entertain and not engage.
I feel like a movie ought to draw you in a way that doesn't make you feel like every 10 minutes you're looking up at the clock going, how long has this movie been? And I don't know that I got that with Locke. I was watching it going, is this the only character the entire time? And then I'm like looking up every now and then going, almost like how long is this freaking movie? Yeah, but see,
that's almost a bizarre, like you went into it with... You weren't.
No, I had no presupposition.
I disagree. You had some presuppositions, which are a film has to have more than one character.
No, I didn't.
That's a presupposition.
I didn't demand that. It just
the fact that it didn't have it bothering you, that means that you expected it. Even if you didn't demand it, you expected it.
Because of simply by nature of statistics and the fact that most movies do.
But
so that wasn't.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but to count that as a demerit, I think
I'm not counting as a demerit.
You are, because you're giving it a negative score, a less than positive score.
That carried it with only a single individual.
You also agreed that it was Tom Hardy's best performance with me.
You
said that at the time.
Best performance. Maybe again on a technical level.
But see, that's where I go, okay, I talked about The Creator being a film I probably won't ever think about again. I gave it more than 2.5 because I have to recognize the technical skill, but it doesn't exceed that because it lacked any emotion for me.
Well, then again,
it would
have to sit on like a 3, which is where I...
Well, okay, but that's better than 2.5 because to me, 2.5 is I literally had zero thoughts about it.
See, that's a 3 for me.
Well, you're dumb then.
Because remember our discussion
about how you were wrong about math.
No.
Mathematically, yes. I win because I made that happen.
Okay. Do you recall I popped mine and I didn't have to talk about my stiffy first.
Well, that's called a dysfunction, I think. It's the opposite of erectile dysfunction. Sometimes it happens without me knowing. Anyways.
It's been longer than 5 hours.
Well, so...
It's also longer than... Never mind.
See, okay, but... Now, here's the thing. Is the only reason you gave Locke as an example just now because we've been talking about it, or have you thought about it occasionally throughout the year? Which means something in it has stuck with you. That's all I'm trying to say. Is you might say, maybe it wasn't like wildly entertaining in the moment, but not all films have to be that. Sometimes they plant sort of lingering ideas that you can't help but come back to.
It was certainly probably a movie of substance.
See, but that's why I find it odd that you would say that that's true and yet not rate it effectively, as if you think, well, substance is secondary and entertainment is first.
I think I've rated it reflectively. It's just not as much as you have.
Well, no, because you are saying...
Yes,
it engaged me mentally, but I wasn't engaged emotionally, and therefore it gets a bad score, despite the fact... Because that then presupposes that emotion matters more.
For me, yes. I put more weight on that. Yes.
But like heavily, it seems. Not like, oh, yes, they're both important.
70-30.
That's okay, so that's pretty heavy. Because that's where I can...
40, but yeah.
Well, then perhaps you... See, I have tried... Again, you need to read the Romantic Manifesto, because it has stuck in my view of of how to analyze art, with the very concise explanation of sort of subject versus execution. Because I feel like once I grasp that, it becomes where I go, okay, something that is really well executed, even if I don't care for it, it has to skew more positive than negative because of the fact that I am recognizing it's excellence in one act.
You can recognize it and still just go, I don't like it.
But see, that's, again, you're treating apathy as negative, whereas to me, apathy is purely neutral. A film that is excellent but doesn't grab me still skews positive because it's excellent. If it's actually positive but I hate it, like it's promoting something that I actively disagree with, even if it's well made, that's when I go, okay, now it's not just that the excellence is carrying and the substance is adding nothing. It's the substance is in the opposite direction of the excellence, and now I am torn by its... Then I don't know that I've even watched a movie that was quite like that, but...
No.
I'm saying simply that I was apathetic about its subject matter, but I was impressed by its execution means I skew positive. Or sometimes it's, there was nothing wrong with it technically, but I just kind of found the characters annoying, then it skews negative.
Just dull.
Because there's nothing positive to counteract its...
That's all I was saying.
But see, you can't... I don't think you can hold that opinion when you say things like, it was probably Tom Hardy's best performance. How can that be dull?
It's dull in that the subject matter was dull. It's like, okay, guy is living his life.
Yeah, but see, how can the subject matter be dull if a performance can be great?
Because you can pull off the character well.
No, because
compelling, but not have the
I would disagree with you on the compelling.
Be interesting.
Because you can pull off a character well.
Compelling means
because compelling is an emotional word, not a technical word.
No, I don't agree. I use compelling to mean
compelling is singular. You can't compel a mass of people. You can only compel individuals.
What I mean,
an actor who is excellent at a character who's annoying will not be compelling.
Is you are communicating the
that just makes you clear.
That just makes trying to present well, or in a manner that's what you would, okay. I'm.
That's what I would call clarity, because to be compelled means I am responding to what you're saying, not just I'm hearing you clearly, but I have heard you and respond, because that's what compelled means.
But that's what I'm saying.
It's what compulsion is. It's demanding a response.
On a character level, he communicated his character to me well enough that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But his character still was not that interesting. Now, that's not Tom Hardy's fault. That's just the fact that Locke itself was like,
I would say that even the best actor, I wouldn't call it the best. I wouldn't call it a tremendous performance if I wasn't, because the whole point of an actor's performance is to compel, not just to say words that are written in a script.
Sure. I
don't
think that it cannot be compelling and still have me say that the character itself, while compelling, was boring.
See, I don't see how you could be compelled and bored at the same time. I feel like those are contrary emotions.
No, I'm compelled by the performance of the actor in what he's communicating. I'm not.
But then that means you have to be responding to something. You have to be responding. You could write, because essentially what you're saying is, you had such amazing penmanship, I was so impressed, but I didn't read the letter. I'm just like, well, it seems like those are sort of, to praise how well something was communicated, and so, wow, I was so impressed by the way you communicated, but I didn't listen to you. It's like, those are...
Not even that. I
don't see how those happen.
The way that your penmanship looks was so great, however, the subject matter in which you wrote about was really dull.
Yeah, but then I would say that makes you a bad writer.
Yes.
And you're saying, no, this is one of his best performances. No, therefore, an actor is not simply, I read the lines adequately. It's, yes.
I'm saying the actor's job is to communicate and present.
The actor's, I would take it a step further. The actor's job is to compel the audience.
Yeah, sure.
And you're saying he did a really great job at that, which means you must have been compelled. And you don't get compelled
by his performance, not by the character.
But see, that's where I don't agree with that assessment, because you don't judge an author on their penmanship.
Sure.
So you're saying he's a really great author. That means you liked what he wrote about, not how well he wrote it.
But he's not the author.
Okay, but forgive the lack of consistency in the analogy. But my point is, an actor's job is not merely communication. An actor's job is the emotional entanglement, for lack of a better word. So So I would argue you can't say he did a great job performing this, but it didn't reach me, because I'd go, well, then he didn't do a great job performing, because if he had done a great job performing, he would have reached you. So you can't have it both ways, is what I'm saying.
Maybe that's true, because the bottom line is, to me, the subject matter was still uneventful, and I think I said that.
Uneventful is not the same thing as uninteresting.
Well, to me it is. it's not there's nothing going on in the plot of the movie. It was like, okay, guy has an affair and
Well, it's
then
about but see,
has
this is
to fix
again
it. Like, how is that
well,
that
because
interesting?
well, it's interesting because of the fact that he handles it in a way that is interesting.
No,
'Cause
he handles it like a man would. You
No,
have two
no,
options.
no.
You have one to either walk out on your wife
Well,
and
but see, this
pursue
is the
that,
point is
or you have the other option to.
But see
try
this
to
but this is
sweep it under
precisely
rug.
the whole
Those are
point of
basically your two
those are,
options.
yeah, but this is precisely the whole point of the film is he's choosing the harder but nobler option.
Sure.
And that's interesting because that directly puts him at contrast with his father character, who is not actually terribly present, but is implied. And it sort of puts him at odds with the cultural expectation. It makes it interesting because you're saying, okay, here's a man who is unequivocally screwed up and who is yet doing the right thing about it. And that's interesting to me because you don't see that often. Usually a character who is screwed up like him would be portrayed as irredeemable. And I felt like it was interesting that they made him the most interesting character by saying, here is how he's going to deal with this. And that I found was an interesting sort of... It's just odd that you enjoy subtlety in things and then you don't enjoy it when it shows up.
It's not subtlety that I was missing. Again, it's...
Well, because I think a small thing can be made interesting, even if, a film that doesn't have much happen is not unlike a tea that has very minor flavor. It's like you like the one but don't like the other.
That's true, because when
that's what
it
throws
comes
me.
to watching a film, that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, but see, that's what's odd is
it needs to be.
You go into different. I guess it's just that you see. That's weird that you would hold that because I feel
like same thing with books for me.
Yeah, but
they need to be epics.
See, I don't.
Typically.
This is what's weird is that I feel like I approach almost everything the same, which is
that may be true.
A good book is as much a good book as a good movie is a good movie, and I don't exactly. Sure. I mean, yes, technically speaking, they have to do different things, but on the most basic level, they don't have to follow a formula. I guess that's the thing is that you're saying a good movie has to be a good movie, but a good tea is different from a good movie. And I'm like, well, no, technically a good tea is as good as a good movie. It has to be. You need to read the Romantic Manifesto because that's the root of. I
disagree with Ayn Rand.
No, because you haven't read this book, so you can't tell me you disagree with it.
If I don't happen to say,
I disagree with Ayn Rand on other things too, but I'm saying I think this framework helps when discussing art.
If you want to interpret it,
well, I think you would need to read it first because I have not been able to give as good a defense of it as she would.
Sure, but all I'm saying
read it, and then we will either know that we are not using the same framework for certain, which is possible, or we are, and we're just using different language.
Sounds like what you've adopted is this is how I'm going to objectively.
Well, because I believe it's the only way you can quasi-objectively review art, and obviously there is always a subjective element.
I don't care about objectively.
Because here's the thing that makes it useful is that art has both subjective and objective criticism. You can objectively quantify how well a piece of art is made purely by its execution. That is the objective part. The subjective part is what's it about. Right. And so you can say, you know what?
Which is what
you can say I like this artist even though, but the two artists rather, in fact she even gives the example of Tolstoy and Dostoevsky being both people she considers to be supremely talented writers. But she says, I like Dostoevsky more than Tolstoy because Dostoevsky, on a subject matter level, I relate to more. Which is basically saying both men are equal artists objectively. Subjectively, I like one more than the other.
You can say both are compelling writers, and yet Tolstoy isn't that interesting.
She didn't use the word compelling, neither did I. I said they're both excellent.
Okay.
In that they, technically speaking,
is...
well, see, that's why I'm wondering: do we have just different words, or are we actually off of two separate?
It's possible that I'm using that word
because
in a different manner.
That's why I like it is because it acknowledges both. Because I don't. If you get into the art can only be measured subjectively, you get into modern art and all of its crap.
No. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you're
opening the door to it, and it's coming in.
No, what I'm saying is,
so you have to put a line somewhere.
Stated that on a objective level that Locke is good, but on a subjective level I didn't like it, and I said that from the beginning. I was like, it wasn't that good to me in my personal taste.
But see, this is all I'm saying is I think the reason I use this framework is because it accepts that both the objective and subjective are not only equally, or they're not both just valid, they are both equally valid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are not giving it the equal treatment.
I am, which is why I have to put it in the center, and why I'm.
Well, that means that you think it was as boring as you think it was technically well executed.
That's correct.
I don't think things like that stick with you the way this seems to have stuck with you. So that's why I'm confused. Because I didn't think about the creator until I looked at this list, and that was like 3 months ago. I watched that.
Sure.
So that's a film
that's that many movies this year. Honestly,
I don't think the quantity matters because it was still a year ago that you watched it. Even if you haven't watched much in between, that was still a while.
As far as new, I can just pull
that
out
wasn't
like
new
a
either.
movie. No, what I'm saying though is for me, I can pull a movie out of a hat because I watch movies every now and then, but it's not like any of those they're all ones I'm familiar with, so I'm not specifically going to reference. Like,
so you're saying the only reason I remembered it is because it was the only new film you watched this year?
Outside of the few that I watched in theater, and I would say.
And you're sure that you haven't watched any others?
Yeah, and that one.
How would you know without your letterbox?
Over and above, something like John Wick 4 or whatever else. Not because.
See that? How? That's where I think there's an inconsistency, is because you like that subjectively, and don't you admit that it's equally as excellent?
It's novel. And
where does that come in? But this is why you need to read the book, because I can't tell if we're on the same framework or not. Because if you admitted, subjectively speaking, what John Wick is appeals to me more.
Right.
Do you also think that it was very well made for what it is?
Yes.
Then it has to be higher rated than Locke. And you're saying, well, no, that probably goes above this. I'm like, well, how can a film that you put at average be above something you like objectively and think is, or that you think is objectively better and liked subjectively more?
Because I think it can have greater value outside of my own framework.
Okay, so you are saying Locke is a more substantial film than John Wick.
Culturally, yes.
Well, I don't think culturally, because culturally speaking, no one talks about Locke, and everyone knows who John Wick is these days.
No, but my point is,
but this means that you're recognizing that. So this means that you are recognizing it has this substance, and I am not reflecting that in the review deliberately, because your review is skewing away from its substance. If you're acknowledging that it has more, but you rate the other one higher, you're saying, I'm not rating on substance, which sounds rather obstinate, like what you've said all the other times.
Substance to me falls into the objective category.
No, substance is precisely the opposite of
no.
Because what a film is about is its substance. What does it mean? What's the message? What's it communicating?
Right.
That's the substance of the film.
And you would objectively argue that Locke is communicating something of more value than something like John Wick.
No, because because your values are subjective. Not everyone holds your values.
That's true.
Therefore, if it appeals to your values.
However, you can look at something like
there are some people who might watch. There's some people who might watch Locke and think he's a schmuck.
Because in John Wick versus
there's themes of redemption. There's themes of friendship overcoming adversity. It's like
that's thin.
No, you can find all these arguments in there. More they're not the focus of the film, sure.
Right, that's all I'm saying.
But my point is, substance is, in my opinion, the exact opposite of what's objective about a film, because some people might watch Locke and think, this dude's a schmuck, and I watch Locke thinking, this guy has made a mistake but is doing the right thing to correct it, therefore he's a good man. So you might say that's you can't objectively argue, well, it's more important. It's only more important because you hold a certain set of values, which the film aligns with. If someone else holds a different set of values, they'll think this is so insignificant. That's all I mean to say when I say subjective.
What I was saying is it was less entertaining.
Well, I don't deny that. I can understand why you'd think that, but that means you're valuing tacitly what you're saying, therefore, is that films should be more entertaining than they are engaging.
And but what I'm saying is that I'm not comfortable committing to that because I don't agree with that.
But that's what your review suggests.
No, my review says right in the middle because I can't decide. I'm torn as far as how I feel about this film, which is actually why it stuck with me. Because the fact that I can't quite decide. Because the reality is, film for me should be something interesting and entertaining. However, I would say Locke wasn't really entertaining, but it did have significant and substantial themes that are very useful to talk about and discuss. So it's
But
like
see,
that
that's
then
the
becomes
substance,
something,
which means something.
Right,
Which
which
means
then-
it communicated to something to you emotionally.
right. Which the point is though, it wasn't entertaining. So you go, okay,
Yeah, but see, that's where I guess I don't seek entertainment in a film exclusively.
I wouldn't say exclusively, but I would say I certainly put a great degree of weight.
I don't
to that
even
when I
do
watch
that.
Film.
Because what I want from a film is to have substance communicated well. Or
I don't know
or
that that's
in the
always what I'm
rare
looking
case
for.
of something like John Wick, lack of substance communicated so spectacularly that it overcomes its lack of substance. Because I'll admit, substance-wise, John Wick, that's one of the reasons I like Locke more than John Wick, is because I think they're both equally well made, and Locke is more interesting substantially. Now, John Wick is probably an excellently executed film with a less meaningful subject.
Right. That's what I was saying. Meaning has
it's-
to wait on something.
But it apparently doesn't weigh as much as
it makes
tickled
the
my
most,
dopamine.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but you're saying I'm going to rate the film negatively because it didn't tickle my dopamine.
I've made it the most famous, my most famous favorite film in this year.
And yet
simply
you have...
because-
Well, every argument you've made since saying that has been why it's not true.
No,
You're trying to say, it's not my
sits on-
favorite, it's
it
just
sits
stuck
on
with me.
average for me.
Well, so
as
you're
a
you're
3,
now... Okay, but then...
but it is still
had
my
not-
most favorite.
you had not
of this
previously
year
up until now.
because of the fact that it has that.
You did not up
significant
until
meaning.
now then say that it... Because I even outlined this earlier, that sometimes a film reaches an average because, or like a book, you'll say, you know, the first half of it's really awful and the second half of it's really great. Therefore, it equals an average, even though that doesn't communicate the experience right.
And see what I would.
And you were never made the argument that Locke is similar, where it means a lot, but it's really slow.
It means a lot.
And so I'm
but
torn.
it's
You were
really
just like,
kinda
I was uninterested the whole time.
It
Which
means
is I'm
a
saying-
lot, but it was it was uninteresting to me. So it's like
Okay, that's not what I'm... No, but you've taken half of what I said without the rest. You're saying I am at odds with the execution and the substance because I thought it was trying to say something important, but I was also slightly dragged along. That's different than saying it was just sort of a bleh the whole time. Because when you say, well, it was in the middle for me, I didn't care much for either way. That's what that sounds like, and you have only just now tried to clarify saying it's not because it was average the whole way, it's because I am at odds.
Yes, I have
Okay,
said.
so you only
I've
just said it.
No, I've said with the film as a whole, I've never been able to actually decide how I feel about it because it's such a weird anomaly. It's not a normal film, certainly.
Oh, certainly, but I would say that let that, I guess, alter your perceptions of what a film has to be more than let it torture the film. That's right. Just go let the category
I
of
don't
film
know
be
that
broadened.
There's enough other films.
Oh,
that
there's arty
push
films.
that-
There's
that
if
push that envelope. That
I
would
can assure you, there's
challenge me to do
directors
so.
who are famous for making those kinds of films.
Do I want to watch them?
I don't know. I do. I mean, that's precisely what guys like Bergman and the Russian guy whose name escapes me. He's like, there are directors who are famous for
Like what types
weird
of films?
like The Seventh Seal or basically anything Swedish. Bergman, he was the Swedish, I think he was Swedish, Norwegian director. The Seventh Seal was his most famous film. He made similarly kind of odd artists. You'd call them sort of auteurs or like not exactly indie movies because sometimes they weren't independent truly. But they have that kind of an indie spirit where it's like, we're going to test the boundaries of what a film has to be.
But see, isn't that the equivalent of modern art just in film version?
Well, the issue with modern art is not that it's modern art; it's that it
yeah.
mostly falls flat. Like I'm not
Well, but
I'm not
doesn't
opposed
those
to
movies
no
as well.
no because there are. This is what's difficult is sometimes when you push the boundaries, you do discover something new, and sometimes when you push them, you discover why they were boundaries there. So I'm not saying that pushing the boundaries is a
Certain times
problem.
You just go, this is lame.
Yeah, but see, you clearly don't think that about the film. This is lame. That doesn't encapsulate your feeling.
No, it doesn't encapsulate.
So
my feeling.
using
It's
that as your
certainly a
review-
feeling I had.
See, I never see that. I admit you can say subjectively, "Oh, I didn't feel that," and you did. Therefore, that's. But I'm simply saying I object to your using that as the stamp of it was
No,
lame.
that
because
no,
even your own perception
that's
of it
unfair. Yeah,
belies
I would,
that.
I would say
But see, this is what's weird because now there's a film that's coming out that's by a weird Japanese guy that I was going to invite you to see, but now maybe I'll go alone.
No,
because you'll think it's too weird.
No, I will see it, but I can't guarantee.
Well, then maybe I don't want you there if you're going to be sitting there being bored the whole time.
I can be a naysayer and still walk away going, I'm glad I saw that. Now I don't have to see it again.
Well, that's just what's weird about it. Is it's like you like weird meandery authors, but you don't like weird experimental films, and you like tea that doesn't taste like tea.
Meandering is different than experimental.
I would call Locke more meandering than anything. It's not exactly experimental. I mean, yes, limited.
It's fairly experimental.
No, because limited,
that's a new thing.
No, because there are films that are very limited in cast. There's films that have 2 or 3 people, which is not that far removed from one, and singular locations. Like there are films that are of this type. It was not the first film to have a single solo performance. I can assure you of that.
Well, sure. I mean, you have
it is not
movies like Castaway where it's primarily only one
but that's
guy.
not even a solo performance either. I'm saying that films that explore single settings with small casts, that's been a genre of its own for a while.
Sure.
So you could call it meandering because it kind of is, but it isn't. I mean, it plays with the boundaries, but not as much as I think you're acting like it does.
It did for me in a very.
Well, maybe it was just the first film you saw that was like that, but maybe if you saw other films, you'd realize it isn't like that.
You don't think it'd be like that, but it do.
That was a derailment that took us past the second hour mark, and we haven't even talked about books.